Carver's log. Stardate 02-25-21. Wingdale, New York. Earth. I wanted to take you out to a magical little place where I grew up. This is the little forest behind my parents' house. And the snow's not too deep today because it was warm yesterday, so it's only kind of a foot deep, depending on if you step into a snowdrift. But I'm gonna get my socks wet for you guys because I thought this might be interesting. I don't really get to make a lot of videos that are more like a video diary, and part of that's a bit of my kind of nitpicky perfectionism, you know? I'm a kind of a filmmaker and worked in commercial photography, so putting out things from my cell phone seems a bit going against my own grain, I guess. And it's also the worst possible time of day to go out and film. It's, you know, somewhere between noon and 2 p.m. I don't even really care what time it is. I don't wear a watch, but yeah, bright white snow, squinty eyes, all that jazz. But yeah, I needed some materials. I'm finally getting back to having carving as a daily regimen, and yeah, I need materials. So I'm gonna take you over to a black birch tree that I felled probably in the summertime, and you'd be surprised, some trees stay green for a very long time. Now it's winter, so I mean the moisture is frozen anyways. So the wood's still good. It's probably spalted, which is all the jazz these days. So I'm gonna walk you over there and then set up my little makeshift phone holder tripod majiggy. And yeah, I'm gonna saw a log and maybe tell you a little bit about why I chose this material. Kind of excited to start doing something like this just on the regular, because I think it's good to show my face a little more and to kind of, well, it'd be good if I could know what the heck I want to say. That's the problem, but I don't like scripting things, and I don't like that whole idea. So everything's off the cuff, and since I'm filming on my phone, I don't have to worry about making it look super pretty. You catch my drift. So anyways, before I get there, check out this amazing beech tree. So I grew up back here in the woods, and this whole place was just like my stomping grounds. We didn't really play in the yard as children, my brother and sister and I. We were back here, you know, there's a Appalachian Trail somewhere back there in the distance, and yeah, we would just kind of run around like feral kids in the woods and make mud pies and catch bullfrogs and stuff. But one thing I've always remembered was this beech tree holds on to its leaves all winter. So if I stop running my yap, you can hear this really delicate twinkling of leaves when the winds blow. And I just always thought that was so beautiful and poetic. Ever since I was a kid, you know, the only tree out here that keeps its leaves. Here, listen. So yeah, something you wouldn't witness unless you really got out there every day. And you know, I still try to come out here as much as possible year round, practically every day when I'm in full carving mode, because I could just burn through wood. So anyways, I'm gonna get to this tree. I gotta trudge through some more snow, and then I'll set up and gab a bit more. Hopefully you can hear me over the wind. It's kind of ripping today. So here's my tree. Of course, Mr. Smart Guy forgot his gloves, so I'm just gonna dig with my hands and find the end of my black birch tree, which is a Betula lenta. It's a really unique birch tree that only grows in the Appalachian mountain range. So think of, you know, classic banjo, Deliverance movies, all that stuff. The Appalachian region's just this amazing, really old mountain range. One of the oldest mountain ranges in the world. It starts in the south, but it actually terminates somewhere up around here in upstate New York where I am. So I guess technically I am a hillbilly. And this tree only grows in this region, nowhere else in the world. And this is where they used to get the flavor for wintergreen. now it's been, you know, synthesized, so they no longer utilize this tree for that. But it's one of the amazing pleasures of carving. Well, any tree really. Every tree has its own kind of unique perfume and medicinal qualities. And this one I just love because I'm obsessed with wintergreen lifesavers as a kid and stuff like that. So kind of goofy. But I really love this tree. It's all part of that experience of like breathing it in and while you're carving it and kind of understanding the grain. And the nice thing about finding your own material is, you know, this tree is, you can't really see it yet, but it's only about that big around. But with, you know, I can get a lot of spoons out of a short piece of round from that trunk. So there's a lot of wood here to have at it. So I like that. So if you're one of the new people carving and you're worried about like, oh, how do I orient the spoon? How do I do this? Instead of asking all the questions online, just have at it. Make a bunch of firewood, sweat it out, you know, sweat it out, chop a bunch of it up, figure it out, purposely break stuff. That's the best way to learn. Questions are cool too, but I just am obsessed with feeling like I'm in some kind of like laboratory where I'm, you know, trying to push the boundaries and make, how can I make a spoon of the least amount of materials possible? And that's, for one, I'm not trying to show off and make something super thin. It's the whole idea is efficiency. I can get way more spoons out of a log if I make them as thin and delicate as possible, but they're also a pleasure to eat with, as they're light as a feather. You can barely feel them when you pick them up, so it's kind of an extension of your body, and that's the whole point, right? Originally we would eat with our hands, so now we're gonna introduce that kind of concept in spoon carving. And I can get really heady about stuff. Take a class with me. I'll take you on all kinds of adventures, you know, and tell stories while we carve together. But right now, I'm gonna dig out this black birch tree, and yeah, hopefully my hands don't get too cold, and I'll try to bleep out any F words I say. But yeah, I'm gonna get sawing, and then I'll show you what we got, and maybe it's gonna be nice and spalted on the inside. But if it's not, I don't really care. I carve it no matter what it looks like, but it's also nice to get something that has a little bit of a character. And here's the fun part where I make believe I'm so tough and the cold doesn't bother my hands. It's actually kind of nice because I have some on and off arthritis, so the cold is actually kind of helps. So my log end is right here, and I felled this tree. It was sitting up against these big oaks, and it was ready to go anyway, so for anybody that's a tree hugger, you know, this tree was going to end up going. So I decided to pick it, and it came and whispered to me that it wanted to become spoons, so I shall make its wish come true. So now I'm going to dig, and of course I could use a log, but this is quicker. And of course I forgot all my winter gear and my mucklucks in Minnesota, so I don't have all that. So I'm gonna get snow in my socks, but it doesn't matter. The small sacrifice for hours and hours of amazing fun carving. All right, so I got my tree, and I'm gonna make some more of those decorative serving spoons I made. So I don't like to measure things, so they're that long, 7 inches or so. I just measure like that, or use my arm, or sometimes people will put notches on their saws or axe handles to measure. It's not rocket science. You just do what you do. I'm gonna cut this actually a bit longer because I don't know. We've been getting a lot of snow like every day, which is pretty crazy. February in New York is always snow filled. So this might get buried again, and I don't want to be up to my hips in snow like it was last week. So I'm gonna cut a long piece, and then I'm gonna shove it, you know, in a snow bank, and that'll keep everything kind of frozen, and it'll keep your wood fresh. So if you're lucky enough to live in the crazy white north, winter is one of the best times for carving for that reason. So, you know, I should bring the camera over actually to show you. So let me do that first before I start making a mess. And instead of pausing it, you can just get some shaky cam. You can see what we're working with. And if you look at the end grain, it's barely even, you know, there's one check going across, so no big deal because we want to split through the pith anyways. And nature's doing the work for us. So now we know where the stress is released in the wood. You probably cannot see that, but there's a crack here. So what I'll do is later I'll use that to my advantage and the wood will split much easier. So I'm gonna cut some length, maybe like one long length, so I can just lug it over my shoulder, because now I realized I can't carry 2 logs because I have a little cell phone camera stand contraption. So let me reset this, we'll do some sawing, and then maybe I'll spin some stories too. Okay, before I cut, this is kind of funny talking to a camera, so you're getting to see some of the real me. I don't want to edit any of this. The easier this is for me to just get done and put up, the more of it I'll do. I'm so used to having big heavy camera, all these wires and all this microphones and all this stuff when I film other people, and sometimes that could just feel like a big burden. And for myself, I'm like an introvert. You wouldn't know that if you saw me at a festival demonstrating for like 200 people at a time, and I'm pretty jolly when I'm around the right kind of folk, but I'm kind of introverted too. So just me talking to the camera right now, if anybody saw me, like if some stranger walked by in the woods, I'd be pretty embarrassed. Don't even know what I'm talking about. So we're gonna cut some tree. Yeah, I have a Japanese style saw. You know, everybody knows the brands. I don't want to do this whole brand thing anymore. So yeah, you use any saw that you like. If it cuts wood, it cuts wood. I'll leave it at that. These things are great. They fit in your pocket. They stay sharp for a very long time. This blade is maybe 12 or 13 inches, so I can fell a tree that large with no problem. So this large tree that was maybe 50 foot tall, I cut through that in a couple of minutes, and it was pretty efficient. And it's got a very thin kerf, which I dig, less waste, cuts quick. But if you're rammy like me and you get tired, because I actually hate sawing, pretty flexible. So they will break, but luckily they shear off kind of evenly. So you could save a saw blade like this for a long time. But this is a tool that you don't really want to lend out to people. Even my good buddies that I won't name names have broken the tip off my saw, and that's okay. Yeah, so I'm gonna get sawing, and I've exposed maybe like 2 feet. So this would be, you know, an eating spoon or serving spoon. If I wanted, you know, cooking spoon sized, I could use this length of the saw, but it's always good to leave a little extra on each side, especially if you're new to this, because you're gonna miss. You want room to play. It's a nice secure feeling when you know you have a little extra meat on the bones. And since this end is checked, I'm gonna make believe I lost an inch of this, so that's waste wood. And I have to start training myself to not say waste, because nothing ever gets waste. If I leave the wood out here, it turns into nutrients or habitat for other little critters. If I bring this home, it heats the house in the wood stove. So nothing ever gets wasted, ever, with trees, which is fantastic about that material. So time to saw. I don't have a lot of clearance under this log, so I can't just saw up and down. I'm gonna have to do a little bit of dancing to make sure my blade doesn't run into the rocky soil that we have up here, because I don't want to dull this blade. They're really expensive to replace. It's annoying. I'm cheap. So yeah, and I can't see what's under the snow, so you gotta hope that there's no glacial deposits or anything under there. Frozen wood's actually a lot harder to saw, but I like carving frozen wood. Not only does it kind of make my hands feel good when they're kind of inflamed, but it splits really easy. It chops really nice, so I can get big chunks off of wood really fast. So I'm gonna pause this so you don't have to watch boring sawing, and then we'll talk more in a minute. All right, so I'm not too winded. It actually took probably an extra minute of sawing than I thought it would. So frozen wood, a little tougher to saw because the fibers are all frozen, all that moisture inside. But you should smell this, it smells amazing. Wintergreen. So I was talking about the medicinal qualities of all the different trees. They all have their own qualities and their own advantages and disadvantages. And I like to look at the woods as if it was your hardware store, your grocery store, your pharmacy. And I'm not recommending people just go out and start eating stuff, you know. That's all you. You can do your own research. But this is a safe tree. The wood sawdust can actually be used to extend your flower reserves. It's edible. You know, people might think that's gross, but if you see anything that says cellulose in it, you're eating trees. And it's in a lot of food because it's cheap. And it's a good way to, you know, extend things like flour and bread, you know, in your bread and all that stuff. There's some really old traditional Russian recipes that use actual crushed up birch bark and some cambium too. So, you know, each part of the tree has its own amazing uses. This tree in the spring happens to be one that has a sap run. So you can tap the tree and collect all that. I made a video, I don't even know now, 2014 or something, right over there actually, where I was tapping trees and I would make wine out of the liquid, which is kind of neat. It's an old medicinal tonic. Just makes for good fun. It's really good to drink. It's like nature's, it's like a Powerade, Gatorade type of deal. It's a little sugary. It's got a hint of mint, so it's a lot of fun. And you'd be surprised how many gallons you can get every day. And that's a whole nother subject. You can go look at that video and laugh at me talking about a bunch of nonsense. So I'm gonna show you close up this tree that we're gonna use. I can't save the bark. There's only like really one type of birch, the paper birch, Betula paperifera. That's the one that, you know, you see the white shredded pieces of paper coming off of. You can make canoes, backpacks, clothing, all kinds of goodies out of the bark. But yeah, anyways, whole nother subject. I'll show you that in the summertime. My friends that are amazing weavers that use the bark. But this tree, you can't really peel the bark that way. It's kind of like cherry bark, the way it peels. And if you want to make tea, actually, this is my favorite tea of all time. So, you know, the outer bark is a little bit dirty and stuff, but when you carve into this, you'll notice between the bark and that little spongy cambium layer that's in between the bark and the hardwood, there's this thin green, I don't know what to call it. It's just a thin green outer shell. I'm not an arborist. Somebody can correct me if they want. But, that green part is where you get a lot of these flavors and volatile compounds that make up the wintergreen flavor. So if you take a bunch of that cambium and you put it in a teapot, you'll actually get like a really dark red tea that's minty. And it's actually, you know, back in the day, chugging brews with my friends out in the woods camping out. You know, the next morning you have a little bit of a headache, you're dehydrated. So this tree, you know, you drink 2 cups of that and that's like almost the equivalent of taking an aspirin. So pretty cool stuff. I can talk forever and ever and ever and ever about trees, but we came out here to saw a log. It was supposed to be a short little video and now you guys got me going. So let me bring the camera closer and I'll show you how pretty this log is, and it's perfect. There's no bad parts of this log, so I'm gonna get a lot of spoons. Out of that tree, you know, if I made eating spoons, I could probably get 6 to 8 spoons per round, and I have enough rounds to have 3 rounds. Sorry, I have enough length to make 3 rounds, so you do the math. I hate math, but that's a lot of spoons. So here's the lovely, lovely birch. You can see that normally this tree is like super like creamy, like a buttercream. But you can see it's almost stained and it's got a lot of kind of cool psychedelic stuff going on, like tie-dye. So what that is we call it, you know, that's spalting. That's a pretty term for, you know, fungus, bacteria, things that make the wood decay and turn it into mulch. It's the stuff you breathe in every day. It's completely safe to eat with, so you don't have to worry about it looking, you know, unhealthy. But if you look close enough, you can see that there's a lot of cool, funky stuff going on. So this was deep in the log. This is the unexposed side that I cut earlier over here. It was, you know, facing there. And there's already a crack. So it's pretty amazing how this whole how this whole thing works. I should mention the most important part is that I cut this fresh when it was green, meaning it was living. I carve living wood. I hate carving dry wood. I'm not a fan. That's for other projects. But for what I do, it's all green all the way. So this is still wet. You can, if you put your hand or your cheek up to it, you'll feel that it's cold. You know, of course, I'm outside, so everything feels cold. But wet wood generally feels wet and cold on your cheek. Dry wood will stick to your tongue. It's an old trick. Lick the wood. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Birch is a diffuse porous wood. So if you look, you can't actually see the pores. It's pretty hard to see. If this was an oak, in between the, you know, winter and summer growth rings, you'd see little tiny straw holes, and that would be ring porous wood, which normally we wouldn't use, but I am a big fan of breaking the rules, but you have to know the rules to break them. So stick with diffuse porous. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go carve whatever you can find. You'll figure it out. This stuff, you know, not to sound like a hippy dippy, but the wood will tell you what works and what doesn't. That's the glory about all of this. So I'm gonna pick this darn thing up and carry it over my shoulder, and I'm gonna make spoons out of it. So yeah, easy to harvest. You know, it stays green all year long. And yeah, I don't know, I like this. You know, it only takes a minute to cut a log, but I thought I would start talking about some of my process. You know, everybody seems pretty interested in what I'm up to. I could be quite mysterious, I guess. You know, I don't like posting much personal things online, so this is part of this, you know, behind the scenes of what I do every day. It's kind of my practice. I'm really connected to nature, and it's not just carving. You know, I'm out here with the trees every day. Yeah, I'm always surrounded by my material, so I have that relationship with it, and I understand how it all works. If I fell a tree in the spring when the sap is running, I'll get more cracks in a lot of my work, depending on the tree. And this is, you know, all dependent on your own climate. So that's why I'm always experimenting year round, because what works one season may not work in another season. So it keeps you on your toes, but this is why you have to get rid of this kind of adult mentality, and you need to get back to a child-like frame of mind where you're curious, and don't listen to what all these keyboard warriors tell you online. You know, everybody has an answer for everything. I'm one of them. I'm a hypocrite, so I'm not poking fun. It's just experiment. You will find the answers, and you'll find them faster if you're willing to put that kind of time into it. So I'm gonna leave you with that. Happy carving. I'm gonna turn these into spoons. I'm probably not gonna film any of that because I'm not really set up for any of that kind of stuff, and I'm in a kind of a dimly lit basement. Ooh, you hear the turkeys? So yeah, it's one of the lovely things about being out in the... That's a crow, but there's a turkey somewhere out here. Sounds like a male turkey. I'm gonna leave that in, that's great. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Nature's confirmation that I'm on the right path, I guess. So anyways, thank you turkeys for the interruption. I think that's my cue to stop filming, because we're probably gonna have a 10-minute video now. But yeah, happy carving, everyone. Happy winter, it's almost spring. And hopefully they let us out of our, you know, self-imposed prisons here, and we can get back to teaching and carving together, which I'd really like. So yeah, stay in touch. Thanks everybody who bought a spoon. I feel like $1 million now. I've been really feeling positive, and thanks. It's just amazing. So see ya. All right, I can't help it. I'm carrying a, I don't know, 50-pound log on my shoulder. I'm holding a camera, so this is interesting. You'll probably see me faceplant. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a pretty area on top of the mountain. I'll tell you what, even in the summer, carving is a lot of work. I don't know how everybody else does it. I don't buy wood, but yeah, trudging through a foot of snow with a heavy log, it's a good workout. You can hear it in my voice. Whew. But yeah, this is the stuff we don't get to charge money for. Really, is all the prep for the stuff we're making. You know, everybody thinks it's all about the time you put under the knife, but really it's all the prep. And if you're selling spoons, then you have all this. Ooh, I almost dropped the log. I should stop talking. But yeah, a lot of work, but it's really fulfilling. I mean, that's why I call it my practice. It's my yoga. It's my kind of spiritual thing too. But I just like hitting a bunch of shit with axes, really, to be honest. So, anyways, I'm gonna get back and maybe make a cup of tea.